What is up guys, Syed here, and today I am in the 2018 Seat Leon Cupra. So some of you, when you watch the Cupra Ateca review, I mentioned that Cupra is like a standalone brand, different from Seat. And when you look at this car, you might be wondering why it's called the Seat Leon Cupra, not just the Cupra Leon. So let me explain. This car came out in like 2017, 2018. At that time, Cupra wasn't a standalone brand yet. So that's why this is called the Seat Leon Cupra. But moving forward, the successor to this car will be the Cupra Leon. And then you have all the Cupra Ateca, the Cupra Formentor and all the other Cupras. So yeah, I hope that explains it. So some quick specs for this car. This has the 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. It's the EA888, which is used in a lot of Volkswagen Group cars. So in your Audis, like your A4, A5, A6, your Volkswagen Golf GTI, your Skodas even. So it's an engine that's used in a lot of different cars, just that it's tuned to give different power outputs. So for this car, it produces 290 horsepower, 350 Newton meters of torque. And if you look at the size of the car, you'll be like, okay, that's a lot of power for such a small car. So this car is a hot hatch. And some of you were asking for a comparison between this and the Golf GTI. But I think in terms of pricing wise, right, the Golf GTI is higher than this, and in terms of power also, the Golf GTI is way down on power compared to this. This has 290 horsepower, the Golf GTI has like what, 220 something, 226 horsepower if I'm correct. So I think a more fair comparison would be this and the Golf R, and we'll talk about comparisons later on in the video. Acceleration for this car, 0 to 100 in 5.7 seconds on paper, so that is quite fast. Transmission wise, this has a 6-speed DSG transmission sending power to the front wheels. Yes, this car is front wheel drive. So in essence, when you look at the performance figures of this car, this is actually faster than a GTI, faster than an RS245, faster than a Mini John Cooper Works even, because all those cars do 0 to 100 in above 6 seconds. But this car takes less than 6, it's 5.7, 5.8 seconds. Only a Focus RS and a Golf R is faster than this car, but those cars are like closer to 200k, and I'm gonna talk about pricing and all that later on also. So I think the closest cars that can compete with this car in the same price category and the same kind of like performance figures would be the Megane RS280, which I just drove I think 2 weeks back, and the Hyundai i30N, the regular Hyundai i30N and the Hyundai i30N Performance Pack. So yeah, this car has two very strong competitors in the same price segment and performance segment. Alright, next let's talk about the exterior of this car. So first of all, I think this is a fantastic looking car. It looks like the Cupra Ateca, just smaller and shorter version of it. There's not much options that you have to pay for on this car. I think a lot of things come as standard. So you get the honeycomb grille in front, the LED headlights, you get the 19-inch alloy wheels, 4-port calipers, adaptive suspension as well. And one thing I want to point out is that I think this car would have looked better with a quad exhaust instead of just the dual exhaust in the back. Dimensions wise, this car is about the same size as a Mark 7 Golf, but this car is a bit longer, lower and wider than the Golf. Interior wise, like I mentioned, a lot of things come as standard already with the car. So inside you get, your ambient lighting, keyless access, rear view camera, parking sensors. But this car doesn't have a 360 camera, by the way, just a regular reverse camera. And interior design wise, I think it's very similar to the interior of the Cupra Ateca. So you get cheaper feeling materials throughout. Like you see here, this part can flex actually. Look at that. It's not a luxurious kind of interior, so you get like this carbon fiber looking trim at the side, this leather here, which is quite nice to look at, quite nice to touch as well. But you see this, very hollow, very just regular black plastic that you can find in cheap cars basically. But everything else in the car kind of feels, yeah, it's decent quality, I would say. The steering wheel feels really good. This leather, you get a white stitching on the steering wheel as well. Very Volkswagen looking kind of buttons, Volkswagen looking gear shifter. The leather on the seats also, it's not the same kind of leather you get on your German cars like a BM, Mercedes, this kind. It's just a different grade of leather, but it's nice to look at. Okay, infotainment wise, right, I have to point out that it works, but it's not very sensitive. So what happens is a lot of times if you when you want to like scroll through like menu options and stuff, but the infotainment thinks you want to tap on it. So what happens is you are scrolling, but it accidentally goes into one of the menu items, which is quite annoying. But I think that's a not too big an issue, I guess, because most of the time I'm using Apple CarPlay anyway, and Apple CarPlay, the icons are quite big and there's not much menu items for you to scroll through. So it's only when you want to use like your radio, for example, then you may have this problem, or when you want to go to your car settings to reset your trip computer, stuff like that. Practicality wise, actually it's quite good, I have to say. So for example, you see your door bins here, you can fit quite a few small bottles basically. Over here, your center console, it's not that big, but you get like a few storage areas, one here, two cup holders. And if you're not charging your phone, this car comes with wireless charging, by the way. So if you're not using the wireless charging tray, you can put your stuff there as well. Glove compartment also, yeah, decently sized. Over in the back, with this seat in my original driver's position, I do get a bit of leg room. I do get quite a bit of headroom as well. Transmission tunnel is a bit tall, so in the back I think you can just about fit 3 average size adults. Boot space, it's about 380 liters, which is about the same size you get in a Golf, and you can fold all the seats all the way down to make more room. Alright, features. This car is not like feature rich or anything, but it does come with some nicer features. So first is this instrument cluster, which is very similar to your Audi virtual cockpit, and it just works brilliantly. Okay, it's easy to use. Your dials, gauges and everything is very clear. Your infotainment system over here, like I mentioned, it's not intuitive basically, but you do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Park Pilot, I have to say, it works really well. So sometimes, like when I'm just driving and I'm not even putting the car into reverse gear, but it detects something in front, and automatically it will turn on and start to, you know, like gauge the distance between you and the obstacle in front. So it's quite smart. And another thing also, there was once where I think I was too close to like the curb or something, and it automatically braked for me. So you get a reverse parking camera, but you don't get 360 surround camera. You get wireless charging for your phone. You get brake auto hold. You get engine start stop. Yeah, I think that's about it. Alright, so how does this car feel on the road? First of all, right, you get 4 different driving modes. So there's comfort, there's sport, there's Cupra and individual. And one thing I want to point out about these modes is that the individual mode, I know this is a feature you get in a lot of other cars, but what happens is individual mode, you can change the car's settings to suit your preferences basically. So for example, you can leave your adaptive suspension in comfort mode, you can leave your steering in normal or comfort mode as well, but leave your engine in Cupra mode. So you get a light steering, you get comfortable suspension, but the engine is in Cupra mode, meaning you can hear the exhaust. So right now I'm driving in a comfort mode. Let me just change it to Cupra and you can see the difference almost immediately. So this is a comfort, this is Cupra. When you are driving in comfort mode, this car is like, you know, at home, chilling, drinking teh tarik, wearing t-shirts, wearing shorts, not wearing a t-shirt even. And you put it into Cupra mode, it's like suddenly it just wakes up and then puts on like its gym attire and then it's ready to go. And in comfort mode, right, the car feels very sedated, very civilized. It's like you can lend this car to your family member and they won't even know that it's a performance car until they put it into Cupra mode. Really, it's very sedated, very civilized. I don't hear the exhaust. It feels like a regular car. It doesn't feel like a 300 horsepower hot hatch. Sports mode is, I don't even bother with sports mode. Sports mode is like ordering McSpicy without the spicy. I don't see the point of it. I either drive in comfort or Cupra. Okay, now when we put it into Cupra mode, right, I hope the camera can pick up the sound, because it sounds amazing. The exhaust sounds louder than the one in the Cupra Ateca. The steering becomes sharper, the suspension supposedly becomes stiffer. And I did a fuel consumption test while driving around in Cupra mode, and it's quite atrocious, the fuel consumption. I think it was like 13 or 14 liters per 100 kilometers. But yeah, just driving this car around, right, you are constantly reminded of how low this car is. It's not like super low or anything, but you do feel lower than most drivers out there. Another thing about driving this car is that the C pillars are actually quite big, so that's a blind spot there. I tried pushing this car fast in the corners and it grips for the most part, but right, when I did launch control, and I've tried launch control I think a good 5-6 times already, and every single time I do it, there's a lot of wheel spin. There's, you know, just too much torque going to the front wheels. So with that, I know that there's a, you know, I shouldn't push this car too hard in the corners, because you'll never know when you're gonna just lose that grip and the car will just understeer and boom, you plow head on into the curb. Also, another thing, you know how a lot of small cars, right, when you drive them, you feel like you're going fast, but you're actually not going that fast at all. It just feels fast because the car is small. With this car, it's the opposite. So there were a lot of times where I didn't realize how fast I was going until I looked at the meter. But yeah, overall, you know, like what I said, it's just a pleasant car to drive, and it's small, so parking it is easy, maneuvering it is easy. Steering is a bit more on the it's not exactly light, but it is very direct. I think if you get this car, you're not going to be complaining about the way it drives. You're not going to complain about the power. There's more than enough power. There's more than enough power for the car to know what to do with it. So overall, what I like about this Seat Leon Cupra is, number one, I like the looks. Number two, the performance is fantastic. Number three, I think it's quite practical as well for the size. What I dislike about this car is probably, number one, the infotainment is not as intuitive as I like it to be. Number two, probably, you know, if I'm nitpicking, just the interior materials. The problem with this car is that it's not exactly this car's problem. It's more like the competition for this car. Okay, so like I mentioned, at this roughly the same price, you have the Megane RS 280 and you have the Hyundai i30N. Now on Facebook, some of you wanted a comparison between this and the Golf GTI, but I think a fair comparison will be between this and the Golf R, because the Golf GTI is more expensive than this, yet it's still down on power. The Golf GTI has like what, 226 horsepower. This has 290, so the power difference is quite big. But when you compare this with the Golf R, the Golf R is way more expensive than this. Okay, so this car costs about 161k, somewhere around there. And at that price point, right, you have very strong competitors like the Renault Megane RS 280 and the Hyundai i30N. So this car is priced at 161k. The Renault Megane RS is priced at 166k, slightly higher, whereas the Hyundai i30N starts at 138k for the regular one, and the i30N Performance Pack costs 158k. So the i30N, both variants are cheaper than this car, and the i30N Performance Pack comes with 276 horsepower, which is very close to this car, and that car comes with a 6-speed manual. So it provides like a similar kind of performance with a manual transmission at a cheaper price. Whereas the Megane RS is a bit more expensive, but it's also, in my opinion, a bit more exotic. It's a bit more there's a lot of character with the Megane RS. Okay, if you are comparing these cars, I think it just boils down to what you really want, because the prices are very close to each other, the performance also quite close to each other. So yeah guys, that's about it for this review. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.